Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you please stand and let us open with our invocation by Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore. We are now in the presence of pure being and immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. We acknowledge thy presence and thy power, O blessed Spirit. In thy divine wisdom, now erase our mortal limitations, and from thy pure substance of love, bring into manifestation our world according to thy perfect law. And our Lord's Prayer, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Please be seated. Such happy music, huh? Isn't it beautiful? During the month of November, our theme at Unity of New Orleans is, of course, gratitude and thanksgiving. So this week, I'd like to wish you all a very, very happy Thanksgiving and express my gratitude to you all for all that you do to make Unity work, and work so beautifully, too. We usually have a Thanksgiving feast after this service, but with COVID restrictions prohibit that, of course. And I imagine that COVID has restricted a lot of your plans for Thanksgiving. But despite the changes and the precautions, we can all use this time to celebrate anyway and to be thankful for our many, many blessings. We can have our own private festival, even if we spend Thursday alone, like many people are doing, or at a virtual celebration. I know my brother-in-law canceled the Christmas dinner Thursday night over on the North Shore. He said, nope, we're not going to do it. And I'm sure many people are doing things like that this year. But you can have your own private festival. It's interesting to me that one of the oldest of human activities is that of the festival, which we, of course, know a whole lot about here in New Orleans. All the various festivals that we have. And of the various festivals celebrated throughout the world in ancient times and now in modern times, we find, of course, an incredible variety of forms. But there seems to be one common denominator for all of them, and that is that virtually all festivals contain the element of joy or of reverence, and sometimes both. In fact, the word festival stems from a Latin word meaning joy. The festival always contains joy and or reverence, because the festival is the celebration of that which is sacred to us in our lives. I use the word sacred in the general sense, which goes far beyond its religious connotation. For example, in the study of history and anthropology, we learn that wheat has been deemed sacred by many cultures because their very survival depended on it. One of the oldest and most widespread of all festivals is the festival of the harvest. Our American holiday of Thanksgiving is a form of that harvest festival, which is probably as old as man's dependence on agriculture as a means of livelihood. Primitive people also considered the forces of nature as sacred because their very survival was, of course, closely linked with the activity of nature. For this reason, there are many festivals even today linked with the cycles and the seasons of nature. For example, I didn't know this till I was doing a little research here. In the Virgin Islands, they celebrate Thanksgiving Day on October 23rd to celebrate the end of hurricane season. When man begins to develop agriculture, as a means of sustenance, the harvest festival, of course, became a very important celebration. The fertility of the land was vital for their survival. Thus, various planting festivals and fertility rites became important in many cultural traditions. As civilization became more and more complex, historical events became sacred too, as people saw how their survival of a nation or as a culture depended on one particular event. For example, our American celebration of Independence Day on July 4th has become a sacred day for many Americans. The Jewish Passover is also the celebration of a sacred event in their nation's history. As man's religious and spiritual systems developed and became more and more structured, notable events in the lives of spiritual leaders themselves became the focus of these celebrations. For example, the birth and resurrection of Jesus have become the focus of major Christian festivals. The Buddhist Wesak, often pronounced Vesak festival, is a traditional celebration of Buddha's enlightenment when he sat under the Bodhi tree. Again, with each of these festivals, we see both joy and reverence as essential ingredients. Now, I'm going to share with you today a process whereby you can experience your own harvest festival this Thursday, one that is uniquely tailored to your own needs and interests. Begin right now by asking yourself, what is sacred in my life? What is so important that my very survival depends on it? What is really sacred in my life? Think about that for a minute. Now let's use the word survival to include more than just your physical survival. Let's also let it include your emotional, mental, and spiritual dimensions as well. In other words, ask yourself, what is so important that my very well-being depends on this? Identify them at each level. Think about it: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. For example, at the physical level, you might say that health and material prosperity are necessary for your well-being. You might even get more specific and say that you need adequate food and water, air, exercise, clothing, shelter, maybe transportation. Identify that which is really important and critical for you, because that constitutes what is sacred in your life. Now, at the emotional level, you might say that love and a sense of belonging are necessary. And you might get even more specific and identify the type or form of love that you need. It might be love from a member of the opposite sex, or from your parents, or of your children, or love from friends, or significant other. At the mental level, you may feel the need to learn or to express or to create. And if you identify ways that this is absolutely essential to your well-being, put it on your list too. What is it that you feel you need to learn or to express or to create in order to experience this well-being? What spiritual nourishment is vital to you, like maybe churches or classes or seminars or things you look at on YouTube, books, retreats, whatever is essential to you? Now, think about that for a minute. What have you really identified as sacred in your life? Maybe 10 things. This is a one-time deal for Thanksgiving. Identify 10 things that are really vital, sacred in your life. Review your list, of course, from time to time if you want to use it in the future, so you can update it periodically, because certain items are liable to change as you change and as life changes. Now, you can begin your harvest festival by appreciating and giving thanks for the sacred things you've just identified in your life. To appreciate means to value, to hold in high regard. The attitude of reverence is one whereby you deeply appreciate the value of someone or something. So this Thursday, honor that which is sacred in your life. Give thanks for it. Bless it and praise the good, the true, the beautiful, the sacred that is in your life. Celebrate your own Thanksgiving. I like to call Thanksgiving thanks living. And I think we'd all do well to make thanks living a way of life all the time, not just this Thursday. Thanks living is really an attitude. It's an attitude of gratitude, and it can totally transform your life. It creates a magnetic consciousness that draws to you, just as a magnet draws metal to itself, good. It just draws it to you. You don't even have to think about it. It just attracts that good to you, material and non-material. Now remember, at Unity, we believe that good has already been bestowed upon us. All the possibilities are there, and we have the tools that we need to access them too, and create the lives that we want. So, thanks living is not an attitude that we adopt after we receive something that is good. It is rather a force that draws good to us, this thanks living. I'd like to share with you another exercise that can help create a state of thanks living in your consciousness for you to have 365 days a year. This goes beyond celebrating the one day by giving thanks for what is truly sacred in your life. It's a technique that can truly develop an attitude of gratitude for every day. So let's look at 3 ways that you yourself can begin practicing thanks living every day and thereby create a magnetic consciousness that just draws good to you. The first method to begin your practice of thanks living could be summed up in these words: look for the good and praise it. Look for the good in life and praise it. One of the basic principles in New Thought teaching is that we tend to attract that which we give our attention to. Another way of saying that is where your attention goes, your energy flows. For example, if we constantly dwell on disease, pain, suffering, we're going to attract that into our life because that is the direction we are sending our energy. It will pull it back in. On a more positive note, if we constantly dwell on health, wholeness, beauty, and strength, we will start manifesting these things in our body and our life in general. Sometimes we might think that maybe there isn't any good or joy in our lives, but that just isn't true. There is good in everyone's life if we just look for it. Often we get into the habit of dwelling on the negative aspects of life, and we're very reinforced by that in our society. Everybody complains, and we kind of sympathize with each other, and the problem is that we quit then seeing the good. We fail to see the good that is really there. For this reason, I'm going to share a daily technique that will help you seek the good in your life and begin praising it. Every night, before you go to bed, write down on a piece of paper one thing that happened in your life that day that you see as good. One thing you're thankful for, even if it's just that somebody let you in traffic. It doesn't have to be a material thing either. It can be a relationship or a condition or a circumstance in your life that you view as good and for which you are thankful. After you write one of these good things that happened that day or that you noticed that day on a piece of paper, place the piece of paper in a container, maybe a big jar or a box or something. And each morning, shortly after rising, pull out one of these pieces of paper at random, read it aloud, and return it to the container. Then, throughout the rest of the day, feel praise and thanksgiving for that thing in your life that was written down on the piece of paper that you drew out that morning. As you do this over a number of days and months, you will begin to see that there are many more good and praiseworthy things in your life than you were aware of when you started. As time goes on, you will notice more good coming into your life too, because you are developing a consciousness of praise and thanks living. Look for the good and praise it. This is the first step toward developing a consciousness of thanks living. The second step toward thanks living is this: whatever good you desire in your life, begin by giving thanks that you already have it. Write these hopes and wishes on a piece of paper too, and add them to that box of blessings. Now, this may sound a little backwards at first because we're so used to thinking that the cause of events out there is what makes us happy. And feelings are simply the result of what happens out there. Something happens, we're happy. But in truth, just the opposite is true. The cause is within us, not in the outer world. First in mind, then in manifestation. Faith in its truest sense is not just a hopefulness or a trust that somehow our good will come to us. Faith is the power that actually makes it happen. In the Gospel of Mark, Jesus says, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it. When you ask and at the same time give thanks for it, then you are fulfilling the law stated by Jesus. Now, when you have practiced the technique of recording each day one thing you are thankful for and placing it in a container, and then placing in the container your wishes for which you are already thankful for receiving, even before you do, after a month or so, you will start to develop a consciousness of praise and thanksgiving. Now, at that point, you have recorded on paper not only the things that you now have, which you are thankful for, but the things that you would like to have, that you desire to receive, and for which you are already thankful for. When you withdraw your piece of paper each morning, make no distinction. Draw one piece of paper and make no distinction whatsoever between what you have and what you desire to have. Generate that same feeling of praise and thanksgiving for everything you have and everything you desire. The sky is the limit. That feeling of praise and thanksgiving will draw good to you, and it will be yours. As it says in Mark 11:24, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. The third step in the practice of thanks living is perhaps the most difficult. The third step is to give thanks even for your problems and challenges. At first, this might sound like some form of insanity, but the thing to understand is that you're not giving thanks for pain and hardship. No, not at all. You're giving thanks for the learning and the growth that will result from working with these problems, working them out on an advanced level, a spiritual level. Remember when you took a course in mathematics, I'm sure all of you have, the teacher undoubtedly gave you problems to solve. The teacher didn't give you these problems just to make your work hard or make your life miserable, as much as we might have all thought that at the time. I know I did. She gave you math problems because she knew that that was the very best way for you to learn to then apply the principle to the solution of the problem and thereby learn. So it is with life. We can't learn anything out of a book, really. We have to have problems in life, and there's something to learn from them. All problems in life are like these math problems. We apply the principles to a problem, we work it out, and then we understand. Maybe we learn how to react to a particular problem so that we can work on that. We have a problem, we see our reaction because we've observed ourselves. Okay, now I know what to work on. Every problem contains a blessing at its center. We usually can't see the blessing because we're all wrapped up in the problem, of course. When we praise and give thanks for our challenge, then we are drawing forth that blessing that is hidden at the center of each problem. How the problem is really grist for the mill. The poet Khalil Gibran says, pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. It's like the chicken is breaking through its shell in order to gain its life and freedom and existence as a chicken and not just an embryo. That's what we're doing with problems. We're breaking through the shell. Give thanks for the freedom that comes when that shell is broken. Look beyond the surface to the reality of the situation. See every challenge as an increase in your soul's knowledge, and give thanks for the growth. I have found that usually what the growth is, at least for me, is that I realize the problem wasn't really a problem in the first place. It was my thinking that was creating a problem. Ken Keyes, author of the Handbook to Higher Consciousness, said, everything comes to us for our enjoyment or our growth. If there is something in your life that is painful, then see it as your teacher who has come to you for your spiritual growth. I'm not saying God inflicted this pain on you to grow. I'm saying that due to the laws of karma or life or whatever you want to call it, this thing happened. But if it is a problem that has happened, then there's a chance for growth. Few of us are willing to be thankful for pain, but we can be thankful for the growth that comes from a painful situation. As we focus on our growth and learning rather than the pain, we will immediately start healing the situation, and the pain will eventually diminish. Celebrate the growth and freedom that is inherent in the painful situation, and you will transform the experience into a great gift, which you will ultimately be thankful for. So say, thank you for this problem that is helping me grow. That is thanks living. It is an attitude of mind that creates a magnetic consciousness that will draw your good to you. In closing, I'd like to share a story that came across my desk this week. I'm telling it because I encourage you to give thanks and to feel gratitude for all the special people in your life, as well as the special events and situations. Maybe you can give some of them a call this holiday season at a time when so many people will be spending Thanksgiving alone because of COVID. A young man learns what is most important in life from the old guy next door. It's been some time since Jack has seen the old man. College, then marriage, then a career, then his family, and life itself just got in the way. In fact, Jack moved clear across the country in pursuit of all of his dreams. There, in the rush of his busy day, Jack had little time to think about the past, and often no time to spend with those who were once especially important to him. He was working on his future, and nothing could stop him in his pursuits. Over the phone, his mother told him one day, Mr. Walker died last night. The funeral's Wednesday. All of a sudden, memories just flashed through his mind like an old newsreel, and he sat quietly remembering his childhood days. Jack, did you hear me? His mother said. Oh, sorry, Mom. Yes, I heard you. It's been so long since I thought of him. I'm sorry, but I honestly haven't thought about Mr. Walker for years, Jack said. Well, he didn't forget about you. Every time I saw him, he'd ask how you were doing. He'd reminisce about the many days you spent on his side of the fence, as he put it, Mom told him. I loved that old house he lived in, Jack said. You know, Jack, after your father died, Mr. Walker stepped in to make sure you had a man's influence in your life, she said. Oh, he's the one that taught me carpentry, Jack answered. I probably wouldn't be in the business I'm in if it hadn't been for him. He spent a lot of time teaching me things that he thought were important. Mom, I'll be there for the funeral, Jack said. As busy as he was, he kept his word. Jack caught the next flight to his hometown. Mr. Walker's funeral was very small and uneventful. He had no children of his own, and most of his relatives had passed away. After the funeral, the night before he had to return home, Jack and his mom stepped by to see the old house next door for one last time. Standing in the doorway, Jack paused for a moment. It was like crossing over into another dimension, a leap through space and time. The house was exactly as Jack remembered it. Every step held memories, every picture, every piece of furniture. Jack stopped suddenly. What's wrong, Jack? His mom asked. The box is gone. What box? Mom asked. There was a small gold box that he kept locked on top of his desk. I must have asked him 1,000 times what was inside that box. All he would ever tell me is, Jack, that box contains the thing I value most, and it will someday be the thing you value the most too, Jack said. It was gone. Everything about the house was exactly as Jack remembered it, except for that box. He figured someone from the Walker distant family had taken it. Now I'll never know what was so valuable to him, Jack said. I better get some sleep. I have an early flight, Mom. It had been about 2 weeks since Mr. Walker died. Returning home from work one day, Jack discovered a note in his mailbox. Signature required on package. No one at home. Please stop by the main post office within the next 3 days, the note read. Early the next day, Jack retrieved the package. The small box was all beat up and looked like it had been mailed about 100 years ago. The handwriting was difficult to read, but the return address caught his attention, Mr. Andrew Walker. Jack took the box out to his car and ripped open the package. There inside the gold box and an envelope, Jack's hands shook as he read the note. Upon my death, please forward this box and its contents to Jack Bennett. It's the thing I valued most in my life. A small key was taped to the letter. His heart was racing as tears filled his eyes. Jack carefully unlocked the box. There inside, he found a beautiful gold pocket watch. Running his fingers slowly over the finely etched casing, he unlatched the cover. Inside, he found these words engraved. Jack, I enjoyed conversation with you, your company, and your presence. The thing I value most in my life was your time. Thanks for your time. Andrew Walker. The thing he valued most was my time. Jack held the watch for a few minutes, then called his office and cleared his appointments for the next 2 days. Why? Janet, his assistant, asked. I need a couple of extra days and time to spend with my wife and son, he said. Oh, by the way, Janet, thanks so much for your time. So when you're writing your notes about your daily blessings, each night, don't forget to be thankful for the time that people give you, saying hello in passing, letting you go in traffic and waiting, listening to your story or problem, helping you with some tech problem or spiritual issue, maybe a phone conversation. There is so much that all of us can be grateful for, and there are so many people and their time to be grateful for. So again, I wish you a happy, happy Thanksgiving for not just this Thursday, but for many, many months to come. Thank you.